Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, the live-action Netflix series, Season 1, Episode 8, Worst in the East. In this episode, I am so bummed that this series is over, you guys. I mean, I'm surprised at how bummed I am. And I knew I would be. And it still has caught me off guard. This was so much fun. And I am not excited about the long wait until the next season comes out. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Gabby for commissioning this episode. Gabby, this was so wonderful to cover, and I am so glad that you were able to jump in and commission the whole thing up front so that I got to watch 2 episodes a week. What a treat. I completely understand that that's not always possible for people to do with a series, but it is really satisfying when I'm able to just do a back-to-back viewing like this. And even when it's back-to-back like this, it's still a longer wait than I would like. So, let's see. Emhan is in the chat saying, my only complaint about the live action series is that I didn't like the change they made R.E. Nami's sister in the village. I really loved how in the manga they trusted in Nami from the start, and it really hurt to see not even her sister believed in her for the live action. Emhan, I will be totally honest, I didn't remember that change. So then in the anime, they believed, did they know already about the deal that Nami had made? Or were they doing the whole, I'm sure she's got good reasons thing and just sort of giving her the benefit of the doubt? Because I don't remember which one of those it is. But I don't, this is one of those things where I definitely understand what you mean. I could also see that maybe it kind of makes more sense for Nami to have the self-loathing that she has when nobody around her understands that she's doing the right thing, that she would internalize the judgment that she is receiving from them all the time. Ryan says, in the anime they knew about the deal but pretended not to, so Nami would be able to run away with less guilt. Emhan says, Nami never knew. They played along from the start to keep her safe, and so she wouldn't feel any pressure to finish the deal if it was too hard. Okay, I see. Yeah, I totally get that. And here is my thinking. One, what I already said with her internalizing some of the loathing, but also, 2, that part of the deal with the crew arriving and being uncertain where Nami stands and if she's really a good person, the theme of that whole thing is, oh my God, I hit my mic. I'm so sorry. I do that so rarely that every time I do, it feels so humiliating. The point is supposed to be how remarkable it is that despite all the evidence, Luffy still believes in her and has faith in her. So I do kind of like the contrast of everybody saying the worst things and not believing her, and Luffy still being very stalwart. However, I can understand that everybody else not having faith in her just so that Luffy can be the outlier who does might feel a little bit easy. So I get what you mean. I have to admit, I don't really have that much of a problem with it. Just because Nami in this show is played a lot darker than she is in the anime. Like, she just seems to... The anime Nami definitely has guilt, don't get me wrong. But I feel like this Nami is somebody who has been really weighed down in a way that I don't feel from anime Nami the same way. And maybe I would change my tune if I were to rewatch that arc now, you know, but from what I recall, there was always a hint something was going on with her. And there was always a feeling of like, you know, she's having to play things close to the chest, but this was... She just brought an angst to the role that I feel makes more sense if everybody is like really intently thinking that she has abandoned them. You know what I mean? Emhan says the manga handled it by having Luffy refuse to even listen to Nami's backstory because he gave zero shits about it. He just believed in her. See, but like, again, I like that. Just being like, I don't even need to hear. I also, though, can understand from a storytelling perspective that it's a lot more efficient to have Luffy need to listen to the backstory so that we get to see it and see everybody's reactions to it. You know, it's the kind of thing where, not to say that they couldn't have done it the way they did in the manga and made it work. They could have had Luffy refuse to listen and his friends listen instead. And, you know, him not being willing to participate, but the other three going in and chatting with the sister. But I like the fact that that story made most of them think, oh, apparently Nami does suck and is the worst. And Luffy was still refusing to back down on how he felt about her, sort of underlines how, yeah, even when I hear what seems like a terrible story that paints her in a really bad light, I'm still not buying it. So, yeah, you know, I hate saying there's more than one way to skin a cat. I hate that saying. I need to come up with another one. I know there's another one, like, there's just another one out there that exists already, an idiom, but I don't know what it is. So if anybody wants to remind me. But yeah, different effects for different things. And also like the efficiency of one way versus another way. It's, I can understand your perspective. I also understand why they changed it. Emhan says it just detracted a tiny bit from the "of course I will help you" moment, in my opinion. Luffy in the manga had zero context about why Nami did what she did, and his instant acceptance was so touching in the manga. I guess that's the part that's not hitting for me. I mean, I didn't read the manga, I only watched the anime, but I don't remember being like particularly moved by that because of the fact that he didn't have any context. It's more like, for me, of course I will help you when the story he has heard seems to paint her in a terrible light. One could argue there's even more behind that he has heard a story that would have made other people decide to finally turn their back, and that he has not got that reaction at all, could show him as being particularly extraordinary in his faith in his friends, you know? But Michael says there's more than one way to close an umbrella. Michael, I don't think that's true. I think there's only one way to do that, bud. I feel like that's a real bad example, and I'm pretty sure that's why you picked it, but I just gotta say it, you know? But anyway, so this whole episode, we start off with Nami as a kid getting her tattoo. And I like the fact that they don't have her be a totally stoic badass. She starts screaming because this shit fucking hurts. And it would, you know? And we get to see how she is kept in a shackle for a lot of her life. And eventually, I think she says that he lets her out on her 16th birthday or something. Like, he says that it's a birthday present that he has let her out. So we then go to our friends walking through the village, and reminder, this is not like the part of the village that was already destroyed. This is Arlong coming back and fucking the town up again after they were unable to pay in full. And everything is burnt down and just like, what's the word? Skeletal, really, is the feeling that you get, you know? You've just got like the bare timbers. There are still some fires actually going, and they're still putting them out. And then everybody shows up from the village, and it turns out that Nojiko has told all of them about what it was that Luffy was, or that Nami was doing. And they're like, can you forgive us? And she says, there is nothing to forgive. Cocoa Village is my home. And he says, then it is our turn to sacrifice. We're done living in fear. We're going to march on Arlong Park. If those fishmen want to fight. And she's like, guys, I love you all. I appreciate the thought. You're not going to fight. You're going to get fucking massacred. And you can see as they're getting hype, she is really worried. Like, this is not her trying to be, oh, I could never accept this. You guys can't risk yourselves for me. This is a very, like, pragmatic, this is a bad idea. You guys are going to die. It's my fight. You can't do it. And Luffy chimes in with that, no, we're right here. Do you see? We just talked about this, actually. This is our fight. And they start talking about how Arlong has to have some kind of weakness. And that's the thing that they need to figure out, because he's literally bulletproof, which really is quite intimidating. Let's be real. So we jump over to the Marine headquarters or not the headquarters, I guess. It's just is it the headquarters? It's just like an outpost, I guess. There's a building, but it's not like the huge area with the courtyard and all. And we've got Bogart showing up to question Captain Nozumi, the rat face guy, who gets found out pretty quickly. I remember being deeply satisfied by this in the anime as well. This dude doesn't get to go on with his corruption very long. It's nipped in the bud pretty soon. So he is being brought down to speak to the Vice Admiral. And it's a pretty fun scene because it's so clear that he is full of shit and is just doing this thing every time Kobe speaks up, where he insinuates that, like, the fact that Kobe is even speaking is proving that he is telling the truth. Like, that kind of thing where, well, the more you question me, the more I can redirect my irritation and my nervousness about the fact that I am definitely guilty of what you're implying, and turn it into righteous indignation, which is something that happens with depending on the type of person you're dealing with. A lot of people react this way when they feel guilty. They will flare up and get really pissed because their guilt is fueling their emotions. And so you'll see this a lot, like with conversations where somebody is being accused of like lying to their partner about something. They would just immediately turn it around with like, oh, wow, I can't believe that you don't trust me. And instead of addressing what was brought up, they just try to turn the conversation into how offended they personally are about the accusation. And it's one of those tactics that works really, really well. It's just the point of it is to deflect so that you don't actually pursue the initial line of questioning. There's a reason it's used all the time, and it's extremely effective on the internet. This is one of those that's not just about like being accused of something you're definitely guilty of, but just derailing by being like, yeah, well, and I bet you believe XYZ, and they bring up a totally other thing. And I fall for that all the time. And it's so embarrassing because I will look back at a conversation and just be like, wow, I really took that bait. He just didn't want me to talk about the main thing. And I didn't. I just did exactly what he wanted me to do. It's the worst. So anyway, yeah, it's increasingly clear as this conversation continues that they know he is full of shit, but that all shakes out a little bit later. We then go back to the island, and we have the series of explosions that I believe is all Usopp. It's kind of a funny thing because the way it's done is so prop-like that it's one of the few times in this show that I've been like, guys, you couldn't afford slightly better effects than this. It really does just look like we had a bunch of flares planted on the ground that we set off with a switch, but ahead of time. I think it's supposed to be that Usopp has used some of his smoke bombs because they were mentioned earlier, and that he sent them flying over the wall ahead of them. But it just doesn't look like it does not look like anything fell through the air and hit the ground. It just, to me anyway, it just looks like stuff that has been put in place for like one of those shows that you watch when you go to like Universal Studios and they do like a special effects centered performance on one of those big open outdoor stages. You know what I'm talking about? So sorry, Emhan says, combine that with a gish gallop and you have the essence of internet debate down pat. What is a gish gallop? I don't know why, but that feels like a slur. I don't like it. So we've got everybody out here. It's so great, you guys, because I was really excited about Usopp going off separately with Fish Lips, and it was very good. It was very satisfying. Everyone's in position, ready to fight. Sanji does this thing where he just like draws his foot around into a stance, and there's something extremely ballet-like about it, and I found it extremely hot. He's just yum. Emhan says it means to throw a bunch of arguments at the other party one after another, even if they're inaccurate, so they can't address them all. Yeah, I could see that. This is one of those where I'm like, I guess it depends the type of person you are, because I'll definitely take every single argument, copy paste it into a note, take out everything that's irrelevant and do bullet points for each question and respond to each of them and reply. I'll waste all my time. Like, it's not helping me look good. It's wasting my time. Like, you know, but again, this is one of my major faults is I can't resist an argument. I can't resist an argument. And I need to learn to I'm getting better. I definitely am getting better. But, oh boy, it has taken a long time for me to even really see how bad it is. And the number of times that now that I'm better at catching myself, the number of times I catch myself, I really realize like this is like the fourth time just this morning. You know what I mean? Ugh, it's real bad. It's embarrassing. So anyway, Sanji does the foot thing. Usopp is pulling his what do you call it? I keep wanting to say rock slinger, slingshot. I had the sling in there. I don't think that Zoro even has his weapon pulled yet, though. Everybody else is prepped, but nope. He just took it out after they start moving. So yeah, he didn't do the same thing as everybody else. His was like a last second thing. And they all split up and begin to fight. And it's interesting because like this fight is taking place during broad daylight, which I think might be one of the only times that we have seen a fight like this, where it's the only other one that I can think of is at the Marine headquarters when they're up against Axe Hand Morgan. And I would call that more of like a minor skirmish. This is a pretty big scene. But I'm so used to things like this taking place at night. And there's something about it that I really like with it being in the daytime. there's a fish guy that comes up out of the water, like soaking wet, to attack Luffy. And he is right in the midst of fighting with this guy when Zoro literally runs past horizontally and gets this guy from the side. And it's so, I mean, I know it's not real, but it's so graceful and wonderful to watch, like how little effort it feels like he had to put into this in order to save Luffy's ass, and how comprehensive a view of the battlefield he must have to have spotted this. And then he like leaps off and lands, and I'm like, wow, what a badass. But he grimaces and grabs his ribs because he's still injured, and I really appreciated that reminder because I had forgotten that he was still injured. So there's a great moment where Usopp gets fish lips in the head with one of his like smoke bombs, and Fish Lips turns to him and says, "Not in the face," and Usopp just goes, "Shit," and takes off running. And I was like, yay, we're getting the thing, because that was one of my favorite bits of that arc, was Usopp going 1-on-1 against the Fishman. So then we go to the map room. Nami is getting the map, and Luffy is seeing, he let me stop wearing that when I was 12. It was a birthday gift. But yeah, he's seeing the cuffs, and you can see Luffy, like, he is so mad. He is really feeling some emotions right now. And it's almost like a relief when Arlong walks in, because this dude is going to be on the receiving end of some rage on Luffy's part. And y'all, can I just say, the envy that I feel for Luffy in this moment, like, I have no doubt that everybody listening to this has one of those friends who's a great person despite all the odds that were stacked against them. And there is like one or maybe two people that was a primary like antagonist in this person's life. Maybe their father was physically abusive. Maybe their mother was like really verbally abusive or absent, maybe there was an abandonment thing. And you feel this deep desire to inflict some kind of punishment on the person who wronged your friend, who is so great and doesn't believe that they're great a lot of the time, because this trauma that has been inflicted on them has like permanently affected their sense of self and the way they see themselves. And so you have these fantasies about, like, for instance, just going to your friend's mom's house and slashing her tires, or, maybe just like starting some kind of like vicious rumor about her. And just because they're a bad person who has never made up for, apologized for, or even necessarily acknowledged what they did. And it's petty and it won't help things. And you know that. So you're not going to do it because it would just harm your friend and they would be upset. And possibly your friend still has genuine affection for this person who has purposely harmed them. And so you have to respect that, even though you find it baffling. But you want very much to be able to like do something. For me, if you're listening, Candace, it's Candace's ex-husband, who is such a bad man in like every way that you could imagine a man being a bad person, that I actively fantasize about like tracking him down and just shooting him in the head. I do. Like, it's just a thing that happens when I hear a story about him. I'm like, how would they tie me to the crime? I just feel like if he were to be shot by somebody like me who is so outside this, like, I don't think they would be able to put it together. I don't know. And I am just so envious that Luffy gets to feel this rage towards somebody who has wronged Nami from when she was a kid, and immediately have a totally valid means of attacking him that is relevant currently and vents that anger and frustration. So anyway, all that to say, Arlong comes in. He's got his giant, like, you know, the sword that's, I don't even know if you want to call it a sword. I think you would technically say it is, but it's got that, like, do you want to say it's a serrated blade when it's comprised of like 8 giant triangles? Does that count as serration anymore? I feel like it doesn't. But yeah, he comes in and is just like, oh, hey, Luffy, welcome to Arlong Park. And he starts laughing, and this dude's laugh, he is very good. And we cut then to Usopp, and he is sprinting through the woods, just trying to get away from Fish Lips, who is chasing him. The way the camera does, like, this is always something that happens for me in chase scenes. The camera will occasionally be behind the person who is running for their lives, and it's so hard to tell, is the view the camera has the actual view of the person behind them, because that seems very, very close. And then it'll pull back and you'll be like, oh, okay, no, they're a couple yards past that. Michael says party banner sword. You're right. It does look like party banners. Like those, the triangles are about that size. Yeah, pretty much. Emhan says, Luffy is pure id. Good thing his base impulses are all only feeding himself or helping his nakama. Yes. Yeah, he has, there's that's like the childlike quality about him. Like, kids are so id, you know? So it makes a lot of sense. It's just whatever immediately is in front of him that he is going to be completely invested in. So this is when Fish Lips does his, like, shooting. It's unclear to me because he shoots what I think are basically like bullets of liquid. When he did this earlier, he did it with fire, like he was breathing fire, and that was what lit the booze up. But I don't remember this in the anime, and that is not at all to say it didn't happen, because, like, I feel like it probably did, but I just didn't remember that this was a feature of his, and it's really, really weird to, like, watch them make this happen in live action. So then we get some priceless back and forth with Sanji and Zoro, who are arguing about who's, like, doing the better kills and the most kills, whether he needed his help or not, you know, things like this. We have this speech to Luffy from Arlong about Arlong being forced into slavery. Or not Arlong, but his people. And Luffy says, all people should live as they choose. Nobody should be forced into slavery. And he says, keep your sympathies, boy. Our abuse and persecution end now. And it was sort of funny because I was like, I don't know that that's sympathies, sir. I mean, I guess it is, but it's more just like a statement of fact that is very much backed up by the way Luffy lives his life. But you guys, I will reiterate my main complaint here that I had last time, but I feel even more strongly based on the way this scene goes. We needed to have seen some of this fishman enslavement. It feels almost like Arlong could be making this up. And I know that he isn't, because nobody argues with him. Nobody's trying to say that doesn't happen. But I feel like never actually seeing any evidence of this at all does sort of undermine the overall effect of his stance against it. And I think that the only reason that they don't show it is to avoid a Killmonger effect, which is to say, in Black Panther, Killmonger shows up with some very real grievances. And there's like a genuine sense for the first 2/3 of the movie, this guy's right. he's making genuine points. Like, this is real, valid complaints that he has. And I can't help but think that there aren't a lot of alternatives to what he's doing. And then in the last third of the movie, they have to undercut all of his arguments by having him be abusive toward women, just like misogynistic. And they really need to give him other major flaws to sort of like get us off his side, because I think they realized in the script that they make him so sympathetic for so long that there was no way to like revel in his victory unless they made him really despicable in some other way. So they took away the power of his overall thesis by being like, yeah, but he's a shitty dude though. Which, you know, I mean, okay, but also those arguments are still valid and still out there. Whatever. I feel like that was sort of the thing with Arlong, that they felt maybe if they showed us fishmen being enslaved, it would be really hard in some ways for us to not root for Arlong, because it felt like the cause he's allegedly fighting for is actually just, because the enslavement is super unfair and really gross and exploitative and awful. So they can't let us see it. All we get to see is Arlong oppressing human beings, but we can never feel like maybe the humans deserve it a little bit. You know, like we aren't allowed to have that nuance, and they keep us from seeing it to avoid that happening. That is not to say that I would think the people of Cocoa Village deserve what's happening to them because of overall, you know, like it doesn't seem like anybody on this island participated in enslavement, and so he's just targeting random people. But despite that, I still think that there might be something to that, of just wanting things to be a little less nuanced in our viewership, despite trying to add a little nuance into the script. Does that make sense? So anyway, the whole conversation here, like the two of them go back and forth, and I love this. He swings at Luffy with that fucking sword, and this thing is so crazy looking. I don't know what it is made out of. I have to assume it's all foam. But he says to Luffy, as he swings at him and stops a like millimeter before his throat, "Could you have used Nami so effectively?" And Luffy says, "Use?" And he puts his hand directly on the blade and starts to bleed as he's holding it in place, and yanks it out of Arlong's hand and says Nami isn't some tool to be used. She's a person with wants and dreams of her own, and you took those away from her. You're no better than that axe hand guy or that fake butler or anyone else who tries to hurt other people. So I'm just going to kick your ass like I did theirs. Because no one messes with my friends," which is a line that they used in the trailer. And I think that he breaks that weapon. I like, there was a look to it when he, you know, pulled it away from Arlong's grip like it had snapped, but I'm not positive if that happened. But yeah, so we have the two of them fighting. I'm not going to do a blow by blow of their fight because it's just so, it's a real similar situation of like Luffy having to realize that the way he fights regular people is not how he can approach things with Arlong. Like, Arlong is working with a completely different set of skills. And Luffy eventually decides that he is going to start attacking the actual building, which I like that Arlong reacts so strongly to the destruction of the building. I feel like under other circumstances, this might seem a little bit goofy, but all things considered, it kind of hits for me at this point. So I like it. So we go back, of course, to Usopp, who is cowering behind a fallen log while he's getting shot at, I put in quotation marks, by Fish Lips. He stands up just for a second to try and be like, oh, I'm going to, I'll get you now, and gets knocked down immediately. We go back to Sanji and Zoro, and Zoro's struggling with his wound. And Sanji says, you look tired. Maybe you should take a break. Which I'm genuinely like, Sanji, babe, he is injured. There's no need to be a total asshole about it. But, it's fine. And oh my God, the like flip around that he does, it's really fun to watch. I would have loved to see, I'm sure that there's a place to find this. I've just been watching, I've been avoiding watching anything because spoilers, obviously, but I would really like to see the footage of them like on wires for these different scenes, because I bet that's really, really fun to see. And of course they're each arguing about which one of them is the most valuable to Luffy. And Buggy from the bag is saying, ooh, someone's feeling threatened. Get me back to my body. We're close. I can feel my toes. I can help you guys win this thing. And they indeed let his head out of the bag. He goes to his body and escapes from the bindings there, and then jumps down, smiles at them, gives them the finger, and then says, hey, so I'm going to get out of here, and flees. I'd love to make things right, but it's time to exit stage left. And that's it for Buggy. And this is a pretty great exit for him. I mean, everything about this is in character. Totally. Ryan S. says, it was a serious moment, but I laughed out loud when he said fake butler. Emhan says he shatters it in the manga. Here he just breaks it. Not as impressive, but harder to do in live action. That's true. Michael says, if you're being compared to a fake butler, you should really re-examine your life choices. Yeah. There are some things that when somebody accuses you of a thing, you just want to stop for a second and be like, oh no, every now and then there's a particular, so we have Fish Lips, who is still in pursuit, and Usopp, who is down, is bloody, like concerning. And I'm watching this like, wow, he really was more injured than I thought he would be. And Fish Lips assumes that Usopp is dead. But it's ketchup. I had forgotten the ketchup trick, you guys. Totally forgotten. So he stands up and says, neck flaps, what are you doing? You haven't even tried my hot sauce. Well, my skin is tougher than bullets, so that won't matter. Maybe you should try one of my fire rounds. I'm a fishman. I don't catch fire. Maybe you don't. But alcohol does. And he shoots it right into the bottle. And this dude, the way this flame goes up, it's, again, you guys, it's not really well done. I almost like it better because of how janky it looks. But it's so obvious that we just like cut to somebody, like a model of a person, like a dummy, standing over a flame that's coming up out of the ground. Like the whole way this angle is done and everything, it's not right. It doesn't look like what allegedly is supposed to be happening is what's actually happening. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it just makes me kind of go like, it's really weird that y'all are excellent when it comes to like handling our martial artists on wires and stuff, and you can't seem to nail the fire aspects of things. Considering how much this is Usopp's primary weapon, I want them to get this down a little bit better, because Usopp is a bit of a joke in general a lot of the time. So when he has his little victories, I want them to feel real. You know what I mean? I really want those to have like an impact. And it's just really hard. Like, I wish that I was able to cap, because it's so quick. But the moment where he gets lit up, if you watch that and really watch it, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's also, when he says, maybe you don't, but alcohol does, there's too long a pause between when Usopp says that and when he actually fires. If this amount of time had really passed, the fisherman would have registered what he meant and would have dropped the bottle. But, you know, so like, it's just the whole moment. I really like this part of the arc. I'm glad that they like went through and did the whole thing, but there are just some things with the effects and the timing of it that I feel like undermine it a little bit. Eventually, though, Usopp goes back to his friends and is like, all right, guys, I'm here to save you. And then he sees that they've taken care of like 15 dudes all by themselves. So Arlong and Luffy fight. Sanji and Zoro are still continuing to fight. I love that the moment where Sanji goes up against this like really the big dude with like the bunny ears. This guy is so enormous. He says, Nami is a fool to have her faith in such weak compatriots. And Sanji says, you don't ever badmouth Nami. And Zoro just says, now you've done it. Oh, there's something about Zoro's delivery of that line that I found really fun. Like, he manages to really nail the sincerity of like, oh buddy, you shouldn't have said that, with like, I can't believe this is the shit that sets this guy off. And it's just a perfect like pitch for that line delivery. But yeah, so Sanji does these kicks where this guy doesn't go flying like a lot of the others did, but every kick seems to sort of dent him in a way that previously he had just caught Sanji's ankle with his hand and stopped him dead. That does not happen this time. And I really like that we have a callback of Zoro being like, Mutan shot, and he says all the great fighters call out their finishing moves, and Zoro looking at him for a moment and then saying, yeah, you're gonna fit in just fine. And there's like so much begrudging admiration, you know. I think not admiration in the fact that he is doing that, but admiration in the fact that, wow, you really align with Luffy in a way that I kind of wish I did or understood myself, you know. And then Nami comes running out, and I love Sanji opening his arms, so excited to see her. And she just flies right the fuck past him into Zoro and Usopp, which makes sense because she doesn't fucking know Sanji. Like, you know? And he manages to look so hurt and like trying to sort of maintain his cool, even though he got cut dead. And while they are all standing there, the building, Arlong's like whole tower there, is beginning to shake. And they're like, do you think that Luffy's all right in there? And the place goes down and they are all like, oh God, is he okay? Like, it really doesn't look as if Luffy is going to survive this, you know? And then, of course, out of the top of the pile of rubble, he busts out and he like it explodes upward like he was jumped on a trampoline. And he yells, Nami, you are our friend. We are your crew. And I love it. Sanji just starts laughing and it's so genuine. Like, it really, I just love it. I love this moment. And Luffy himself starts laughing, and pretty soon kind of everybody is sort of like, even Zoro is going, well, shit, and has that like kind of smirk on his face, like this fucking guy. And it's really sweet. I really, really liked this. There are times where a script calls for everybody to laugh and it will feel very unnatural. And I really believed it with this scene. And that's tough to pull off, you know? I just want to mention too, like Nami's clothes. She's wearing that like green cloud top for most of that. And then when we transfer to the next scene, she's wearing a yellow, like checkered, I guess you would say, or yellow plaid dress. And I'm pretty sure that's accurate to the anime. And I really am excited now that I'm like fully through and spoiled that I could probably watch some like side-by-side comparisons of the show, the live action and the anime. Now, I'm not going to go look for them because I am sure that there are some out there that contain spoilers for things beyond where the live action is at. But if anybody who's listening to this wants to share a particularly good like YouTube or TikTok that does side-by-side comparisons of a lot of moments, I eat that shit up. So feel free to drop it in the Discord channel and let me know about it. So we have Sanji hitting on Nami's sister unsuccessfully, giving Zoro a hard time because he came back for seconds. And I love it. You must have liked it if you're coming back for seconds. It was fine. That empty plate says different. Well, I have to keep my strength up even with your cooking. And these two, there is a really nice dynamic here. I like it. I cannot wait to see more of this. And of course, Usopp is telling everybody the story of how he defeated Arlong all by himself, even though Luffy is standing right there. It's so wild to me that Usopp feels fine with like just flat out fucking lying and taking the credit. It's of course fine because it's Luffy. So he's just like, yeah, 3 cheers for Captain Usopp. But anybody other than Luffy would be like, really, dude? You know what I mean? Emhan says, another nitpick, the guy playing Sanji is too charismatic. The comedy of Sanji in the manga was that he's a really good-looking and smooth guy until he encounters a woman, in which case he becomes a ridiculously corny tryhard, and so he repels women instead. When I see this Sanji deliver his flirty lines, I don't know how women aren't falling at his feet. No real good way to do the super goofy faces of the manga and anime, I guess. No, see, this is the difference between us, Emhan, because I find Sanji really, really fine and hot until he does the hitting on. And then I'm like, oh, dude, stop it. Like, I am repelled by it. When he's like flirting with Nami when she's ordering a drink and he's like winking at her and just being like something sweet for someone sweet. It's awful. Like, I hate it so much. The line with her sister and being like, I could arrange for some private lessons. You're just like, dude, no. Like, I definitely see him as charismatic in general, but he lays it on way too thick every time there's a woman. I feel like he hits a really good note for like smarmy instead of being so over the top goofy as he is in the manga, which I don't know how that really would have translated. Just turning almost oily and gross kind of accomplishes the same thing to me. So like, I definitely get what you're saying. And I'm sure that there are some women who would be like very into the way he's flirting. So it may not be quite over the top enough, but for me, I cringe so bad. Like, I hate it. I hate it so much. The wink is so awful. I just, every time I think of that, I'm like, ugh. But anyway, so yeah, 3 cheers for Captain Usopp. We couldn't have done it without him. Everybody starts cheering and Usopp is just so gratified. This is what he wanted. This is everything, you know, it's so cute. And then it gets ruined because the Marines turn up and fucking Garp. He orders, this is so like, I don't remember anything about the way this winds up going when we finally meet Garp, but I know that the scene is like invented. We've got Kobe, and he directly defies Garp and is like, you have to go and retrieve Luffy and arrest him because of the destruction he committed and him being a pirate. And Kobe straight up says, no, he was not in the wrong. He saved Cocoa Village. He's like, you have your orders. And Kobe stands by it and says, nope, won't do it. And he says, you know what the punishment is for like disobeying orders? And Kobe says, I disagree with the order. And then here comes Helmeppo being like, yeah, me too. Yeah, I don't think this is right either. And I was like, a word? I didn't think Helmeppo was going to like show a spine within this season. I kind of thought that might take a little bit longer, but I like it. I'm fine with it. And ultimately what it turns out this is a test for Kobe, because Garp wants people who do the right thing and do not just follow orders. But of course, at this time, it doesn't look good. And I like too that he specifically turns to everybody else and is like, does anybody else want to throw in with these two? Giving all of them an opportunity to do the right thing. But they think what he's looking for is obedience, so nobody else speaks up, which basically just solidifies his assertion later that like most people just do what they're told. And that's not what I'm looking for. So this is when Garp says, Luffy, last chance, give it up. And then when he says, show me what you got, Luffy goes to punch him. He dodges, and then he punches Luffy, and Luffy goes flying like 30 feet. I love this. I don't want to fight you, Grandpa. You've been fighting me your entire life. And they go back and forth exchanging these blows. Garp is in this immaculate white suit the whole time, which like is setting a perfect tone against the backdrop of this charred, destroyed village. It's a combo of him visually just standing out, but also the practical aspect of there is no way you should be able to wear white in these surroundings and still look as put together as you do. Luffy is getting thrown into ash and debris all over the place. So he looks like hell because he's covered in dirt. He's rolling on the ground. But this dude is out here just fucking immaculate. It's just really something. So this is when Luffy decides he's going to do Gum Gum Rocket and he's really going to make a stand. And he goes flying at his grandfather, who punches him while he's in midair. You really think this is like the final victory blow. It is not. It is just so embarrassing. And Garp is like, you don't get what the fucking world is. The Grand Line isn't a child's game. And he's got Luffy by the throat. And Luffy says, I'm not giving up on my dream. I am going to the Grand Line and I will find the One Piece. And there's a long pause as he starts laughing, looking down at his grandfather. And we have the flashback to Gold Roger and the way he was laughing. And Garp lets go of him and looks around and at the sky and starts laughing himself and is just like, well then. I have to mention too, like, again, Luffy is crouched on the ground, just covered in debris, and Garp is still absolutely spotless. He's wearing, as like with this white suit, a black shirt with like an aqua tie for the marine colors. It's a great look. I love it so much. And then he's like, all right, guys, go and arrest Arlong's guys. There's still a lot of them around, so go take care of them. And just sort of like leaves the situation for now. the corrupt rat face comes forward and is like, well, what about these straw hats? And as he's in the middle of like whining about them, Nami comes up behind him and smashes him in the back of the head with her staff. And I had forgotten that was like, I think that's how it goes in the manga. Because I think I remember him like wishing a little bit that she was the one to finish Arlong off and being kind of unsatisfied with the fact that it's only this dude that she manages to help take down. But anyway, so this is when Garp turns to Luffy and is like, I needed to make sure that you were really fucking committed. And Luffy is like, you were testing me? Couldn't you have gone a little bit easier? And Garp says, where's the fun in that? He is correct. That's the point of a test, is that it's possible that you will fail it. That's the, that's the whole thing. And Garp takes Luffy by the shoulders and says to him, you're on your own now. And of course, Luffy has to do the no, I'm not. And I'm wondering if this signals that the Marines won't be such a thing, or at least Garp and Kobe won't be such a thing in the second season. But I have to assume they will be. I would guess that they probably have contracts that would include them. So we'll see how that goes. But the way that he says you're on your own now, if I were reading this in a book, I would think this would be the last time I'd see him for quite a while. I'd assume he'd come back eventually, but you know. So then we have a scene with Nami, who is sitting by her mother's grave and talking to her about going off on adventures and wishing that she understood way back when all of the things that her mother sacrificed. And I just really, this touched me a lot, because this is just the truth of growing older. You have issues with people, and it's not to say that you don't grow up and also realize people were shittier than you realized, but there are a lot of times where you understand that you had a very childish understanding of their motivations or their concerns. And once you get old enough to sort of look back, you go, oh my God, they were giving up a lot, or they were very rightfully worried about me, or, you know, whatever. And you wish that you could go back in time and talk to your younger self and be like, you've got to stop giving them such a hard time. They are doing their best, you know? And I really want to mention here, and this is going to like be something that I'm going to couch in a kind of language that I hope gets my point across, because I feel like what I'm saying could sound like body shaming, and that's the opposite of what I'm trying to do here. It's a difficult thing because, of course, talking about Nami's figure, when I haven't talked a lot about the other guys, well, Zoro's, I guess, and a little bit of Sanji, but you know what I'm saying. But there's a reason why, because women have been under a particular microscope in this respect, and I have grown up with that kind of trauma at the forefront of my experience as a woman. So Nami is so strong looking. Like, she looks healthy. She looks like somebody who was on a farm and has muscle mass and is just like, you know what I'm saying? And I just, every time I see her in any outfit on this show, it like makes me stop and realize how fucked up my perception of women's figures is. Like, Nami would have been considered too fat for television very, very recent. Like, we're, you know, talking like 10, 15 years ago, she would have been seen as too fat, which, look at her, like, that's asinine. But it's a fact. Anybody above a size 4 was pretty much not allowed. And I'm going to put Nami at maybe a 6. I would say like an 8 in pants, because that girl got some ass on her. And that it's so absolutely unforgivable that topping out at an 8 is like, wow, how impressive that she's on screen at all and she isn't hidden away like some kind of freak. But honestly, you guys, there have been a lot of things surfacing lately, like headlines from the 90s that were body shaming women, that you see it with the eyes of today, where our standards for bodies have changed a lot. And they always do. Like, our evolution on what we consider peak beauty is different in all decades. Like, there's always a different look that is very popular. Right now, we're in a super, super curvaceous period, which means that the like boobless, hipless look of the 90s looks so extreme now. And there was like a thing that was circulating of Mariah Carey, and she must be a size 2. And the headline was Mariah Carey's Porky Pins. You can Google this. I'm sure it will come up. You would never believe that this was a picture that they were using to body shame a woman for being too fat if you didn't see it in print. It's absolutely beyond belief. So every time I sort of stop and think, God, Nami is really, really pretty and like feels very strong. And why is that so noticeable to me? Why am I so aware of it? I then have to sort of like stop and go, oh, because we're often shown very exceedingly slender women, that I think of that as being the norm. And so she stands out when, you know, like, really, it's not like that body type isn't a body type that's valid and exists, but when it's all you're allowed to put on camera, it has an effect. And her sister joins her and tells her about how proud she is of her. And if there's ever a time where she wants to come home again, she's always got a place, you know. And then Kobe comes to visit Luffy. It's great. I love this. Luffy is eating a tangerine. And Kobe says, I'm not here as a Marine, Luffy. I'm here as your friend, and presents him with his wanted poster. Nezumi's last act of revenge. And it's 100 million berries, I think, or 1 million. I don't remember. Hold on. I'm going to see. It's the highest bounty in the East Blue. Luffy is so psyched. His acting in this, with how thrilled he is, it's just a kid on Christmas morning. Like, he is nailing it. It's so great. I love it. And he gives Kobe this big hug. And yeah, they have their goodbyes. It's just very sweet. I love the actor who plays Kobe. And I was just very happy for Luffy here. We jump ahead to Sanji, who is so pleased that Usopp, the back of his head is on the poster. So he considers himself also like a part of this. Sorry guys, maybe if you work a little harder, you'll get a bounty too. And Zoro's like, dude, that's going to mean everybody's gunning for you. And I love how much Usopp changes his tune. He's been chortling until it's mentioned like, yeah, this is going to mean you have to fight more. And then he's suddenly like, oh, maybe I don't love this. And Luffy says, well, it's a good thing we're not staying in the East Blue then. We're going to the Grand Line. And we get a little series of, you know, different people who have gotten the newspaper. We have that, it's not a pelican. Is it an albatross, I think, that delivers the papers back in Luffy's, like, hometown. And, you know, everybody is seeing this. It's the woman who runs the bar there. And then we have Usopp's girl, whose name I can literally never remember, and her seeing this. And then we've got Zeph finding it, and Zeph's hat. I don't know if we just hadn't seen Zeph's hat in the show at all, or if I had not noticed because so much else was happening, but it's the 3-foot tall chef hat, and it's great. I love it. But yeah, Zeph pins it up, and like, he's got it in like the central area of the kitchen. And I was like, that is such a weird thing to do, but also I like it. And then it's 30 million berries. That's what it is. Buggy peeling Luffy's face off of, because like his poster got put over Buggy's poster. And he says, I'll kill the little shit myself, which you could think is just for the berry, but it really feels like it's an insult that Luffy has outpaced him. And then Alvida from the corner says, if you don't, then I will. And she raises a glass to him, and I was like, oh, Alvida's back. I was really glad. I want more of her. She was underused. And I really kind of hope that they don't do the thing with her where she eats the berry or the devil fruit that makes her like skinny, because I want this Alvida. Come on, let's just let a fat girl have her time, you know? So yeah, Garp is like, I guess there is some of me in him after all. And Kobe comes in, has the whole I don't regret my actions, and Garp being like, yeah, you guys are going to get direct training from me now, so I hope you're ready because I am going to whip your fucking asses. We have Shanks, who he gets visited by Mihawk and gets presented with this news. It's a fun little scene. He's really hungover. So he's like, Mihawk, I don't want to do this right now, man. I'm just recovering. But Mihawk says, you're not even half the man you used to be. Shanks says, I could take you, and says, and with one arm tied behind my back. And then he just starts cracking up, and so do all his men. But yeah, Mihawk is delivering the paper, and everybody is so pleased and just, you know, throwing a party to celebrate. Mihawk, when he's like, this calls for a drink, I thought you were hungover. And when they ask him, don't you want to stay and have some? He does one of those indulgent, like, I'll do you a favor by staying, even though clearly this is a guy who needs some friends. Like, we get it. You're a lone wolf, but also have some friends and some drinks. We go to, the Going Merry, and they have the tangerine trees on the ship, which is lovely. I'm really glad that they kept that. And then we've got the beginnings of, we have the reveal of the sigil, I guess, the Jolly Roger. And once again, Luffy's reaction to this, in combination with his reaction to finding out that he is the most wanted man in the East Blue, he is so overwhelmed. I just loved it the whole way he played this. And Nami is looking at the map of how to get to the Grand Line, and she's like, the river looks like it's going up a mountain, which is not how anything works. So I kind of think somebody drew this wrong. And Luffy basically is like, we'll worry about that when we get there. So let's just take it one thing at a time for right now. Then we go to Sanji, and he's like, all right, we have to have a cast-off ceremony. And he pulls out a barrel. I had no idea what this was referencing. And I don't know if this is a common thing. I feel like this happened in the anime, and I had a similar question then. But they do the, like, I'm going to put my foot up on the barrel and I'm going to pledge what my desire is, my dream, you know? So they each do it. They each put their foot up, and it's a moment of unity with the group. And it's cute. It's just weird because I've never seen it done with feet this way. So yeah. Luffy thrusts his fist in the air and says, we're going to find the Grand Line and nothing is going to stand in our way. We then get the end title credit of like the One Piece coming at us and going past. But we've got a military march that begins to play, and a smoky room, and a man who is smoking 2 cigars. And he uses one to burn Luffy's face out of his wanted poster in a very dramatic. So yeah, we've got Captain Smoker on deck, guys, and I'm really, really interested to see. This is like his back is to the camera. I am going to assume that they haven't actually cast him yet, so they just picked somebody to wear a wig, and they're gonna, but I'm excited that he is here, and you guys know how much I enjoy him as a character. So oh my god, there's so much in the chat I am so sorry, guys, but I am not going to be able to go over all of it because I'm over time already. P.S. Michael says, I like being able to see Luffy's hat reflected in your glasses. Oh, that's funny. That's nice. Yeah, I like that too. Mhan says, Usopp's resolution seemed a little weak and out of place. Yes, I definitely agree with that. I feel like Usopp is the one they know how to handle the least. You know, he is kind of he's a little tricky, you know? So, yeah, I mean, you guys know it took a little while for him to really grow on me. And now I love him. But there was a bit there where I was kind of like, is this guy only comic relief? Like, but he's not enough comic relief to really, I don't know. But anyway, all right, I got to wrap up. Thank you guys again for joining me. Appreciate you all so much. Thank you, Gabby, for commissioning this. And hope y'all enjoyed the coverage. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.